But anyway, I wanted to talk about something. I'm both excited and a little nervous. Why? Well, my mama Venus, our lewd lady of lust, is about to conjoin Mars in just a few days, right? I mean, that shiz is hot and sexy. You have all that Martian passion and drive blending with the Venusian sensuality and desire. But what does that mean, right? To me, it means steam. Steam. Mars is hot and Venus is wet. So I'm talking about lots and lots of sultry, steamy, slimy, juicy. Well, you know what I mean. And I have to be honest with you. You all pretty much know this, but half my personality is astrology and the other half is just absolute filth. But this is the quintessential filthy transit where lust and aggression meet. Venus is feeling extra frisky and wants a ride. She's being a cowgirl. Yes, cowgirl. A reverse cowgirl. Sounds like so much fun, doesn't it? But then why am I nervous? Well, Mars may be fun, but he's definitely not very nice, is he? Mars and Saturn are the malefic planets, meaning they bring the challenging and painful events of our lives, don't they? But modern astrologers always get all wacky with me when I bring up the words malefic and benefic. They always say, oh, there's nothing really bad in astrology, right? It's all good from the angle of the soul. Okay, cool. Yeah, relativity, right? Sure, whatever. But how does it feel to get slapped in the face? I mean, some of us like that sort of thing. But it's generally not a nice feeling, is it, to get hurt? And that's what I mean. It's the subjective experience of these things. And Saturn is, of course, the greater malefic, and Mars is the lesser, right? Whereas Saturn denotes long, drawn out, and protracted struggles, painful conditions that seem to persist. And Mars is more abrupt. It's like quick collisions, injuries, fights. Mars cuts things off while Saturn slowly gnaws them off, It's like when a coyote gets caught in a bear trap, that old sort of adage where they... But that's why Mars rules surgery and breakups and all the like, you see? Meanwhile, Saturn rules imprisonment and isolation. The reason I'm nervous is because these two mean planets are about to conspire together in a specific configuration that's recognized in ancient astrology. And I'm talking about Malefic Enclosure. And what does that mean? It pretty much means what it sounds like. It's when a planet is wedged between both malefics. In this case, it's my mama Venus, right? Let's look at the fun chart now. I'm going to share my screen. So here's Venus right here. You see how she's conjunct Mars within minutes right now. And boom! Venus has just leapt ahead of Mars. So what is malefic enclosure? It's when a planet is wedged between both malefics. You see Saturn's over here in Pisces and Mars is over here. And Venus, well, and the Sun and Mercury are all sort of stuck in between. But I particularly care about Venus because, she's my mama and she's one of the benefics. And she's a planet associated with social relations, right? So it makes a big difference in our lives because this is how people get along. So I sort of think of it as Venus is about to climb on top of Mars. As soon as she's done with her O's, her O face. She climbs off right into Malefic Enclosure, doesn't she? Now, Mars rules the blood, so it's sort of like she's starting her cycle, isn't it? Immediately after. And you could think of conjunctions as the beginning of a cycle. But basically, this means that a planet can't express itself properly. They struggle to express their essential qualities. So it really sucks when a good or benefic planet, like my mama Venus, enters malefic enclosure because there's a typical promise of pleasure, right? That she carries with her, and this gets diluted drained and suppressed and spoiled by Martian conflicts and failures. It's like Venus has to fly under the radar, you know? But before we talk about what it means for you, I want to talk a little bit about what Venus conjunct Mars means in a birth chart. Firstly, Venus is what? Desire, beauty, pleasure, the feminine nature, and our social nature, right? Mars, on the other hand, is aggression, passion, violence, and victory as well as the masculine nature, you see? And when these blend in a conjunction, we often see what? Aggressive desire, right? These people know how to get what they want, and they don't often take no for an answer. It can indicate a tendency to be abusive and domineering sometimes. And yes, this does have a toxic expression too, like being willing to do whatever it takes to get people to do what you want. I don't know if anyone remembers Aqua Teen Hunger Force, but there was Meatwad. He's a little meatball character. And he said, do what I said because I said it. You know, it's that kind of thing. But these people can be quite blunt and direct and hurt people's feelings, whether they mean to or not. But it can be good for leadership. I've had friends with this who are in management positions in restaurants. And they were very good at motivating people, you know, the good kind of manipulation. We often call it inspiration. It lifts people up to want to do things. And this is because Venus is our social nature. And these natives are able to express their desires with a little fuerza. Fuerza, you know, force and passion. But that force and passion can also lead to relationship struggles, right? I mean, those of you with this placement, I'm sure know about that. And that can be from the force of the native's own sexuality and desire, right? Sometimes we want more than one partner can give, and we can get the wandering eye. And that's not necessarily bad if you're polyamorous. And we communicate all these things to our partners. But in monogamous relationships, we can see that impulsiveness and sometimes abrasive communication style being hurtful to our sensitive partners, right? Unless you're like me, you know? I mean, I know I'm a masochist because I get my feelings hurt all the time. But these natives don't usually care about social niceties or expectations. I'm a Libra moon. That's not me. Right? I'm hyper aware of what I think people are thinking, but they don't care. And they can be quite abrasive and just say stuff that would typically sound offensive. You know, it's like you might be coming into work and they'll say to you like, hey, how are those hemorrhoids doing? Right in front of everyone, you know. Has it gotten any better yet? Did you try the Prep H pads like I told you? Embarrassing. And they don't care. This can also manifest as confidence and arrogance, though. And people often ask me what the difference is between confidence and arrogance. I always say that the difference is awareness and effort. Arrogance is easy. It requires neither of them. You just assume that you're better than people. And boom, done. Like, yeah, I could totally do that. I could totally do that if I wanted to. Confidence, on the other hand, is hard won through what? Pain and suffering. I'm Saturn, girl. Everything comes through pain and suffering. Right? Remember the Princess Bride? You mock my pain. Life is pain. Anyone who says otherwise is selling something. To me, that's true. But it's also pain punctuated by amazing joy, isn't it? But it comes through the pain of accomplishment. That's where confidence comes from. It takes both awareness and effort to accomplish things, doesn't it? Right? Confidence comes from actually doing shit. It's like we can look back and say, yeah, I did that, yo. And I know I can do that. And these are the kind of people who can make good leaders as long as they show that they can be in the trenches with the people that they're leading. We often see a balanced and unconventional gender expression too. Beauty and looks will still matter a lot, but it's more of the Martian aesthetic, you know. I think of bodybuilding and muscles, the athletic aesthetic, right? Like when you show up in sports bras and joggers and a baseball cap. And we'll see women express more of their masculine nature with this placement, and men express more of their feminine nature, quite typically. Like I think of dudes who are metrosexual. We don't use that term anymore, but you know, it's a 90s thing. It was when guys were interested in self-care. We see men who are obsessed with fashion and style. Like, for example, Adolf Hitler had an exact conjunction between Venus and Mars in Taurus. And look how obsessed the Nazis were with Hugo Boss and leather. I'm firmly anti-fascist, but I'm also into kink, you know, and we've successfully taken back leather culture, thank goodness, because they don't deserve it. But I also think of pantsuits, you know, the Hillary Clinton look. I mean, she does have Venus square Mars. But the common manifestation for women that I see with this is tomboys, right? It's like girls who like to do boy stuff. You know, the girls who eat boy slop and do boy math. I mean, I had a few ex-girlfriends that did boy math on me, you know. I mean, those are bad examples. But we do see women who prefer having male friends, perhaps that love going to sporting events or, you know, into cars, right? And like, I'm kind of athletic, but I hate sports and I hate watching them. We also see girls who rebel against fashion or things commonly labeled as girly. I mean, I love this kind of energy. These are the kind of girls who love to chug a beer and they burp really loud in front of everyone. And they show they like you by busting your balls a little bit and getting your goat, yanking your chain. I mean, this is my experience. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's fun. It's just when it crosses the line into being mean and spiteful that it's not fun. And some quick examples of famous people with this Venus-Mars conjunction in their birth charts are, number one, Julia Stiles. I love Julia Stiles. Well, first of all, she has them in Aries, the conjunction Venus and Mars. So that's pretty cool. And Venus is not happy in Aries, as we know. She's already brash there. And one of my favorite things that Julia Stiles did was 10 Things I Hate About You. Remember that movie from the 90s? Well, it was 99. It was the very end of the 90s. But she played a character named Kat, who was a tomboy athletic type, who also went through an abusive relationship situation in high school, right? And as a consequence, she hid her vulnerability behind a wall of aggression. And she keeps trying to prove herself, right, to this other male character. In real life, though, she is a big sports fan. And she even threw out the first pitch at a Mets game. And she's a self-described feminist. And she's a fighter for women's issues. She's very political. The other person I saw with this is Deborah Ann Woll. God, they're both so beautiful, aren't they? And Deborah Ann Woll, right? She's the famous actress who played Karen Page in the Marvel series Daredevil and in The Punisher. And like Stiles, she also has her Venus-Mars conjunction in Aries. Yeah. That's so mama. Like, oh my gosh, mama, you know. In a similar fashion, her character had a very assertive and even sort of masculine presentation. I mean, she's a fighter who doesn't give up, right? And what's interesting about her in real life is she's totally involved and immersed in this tabletop gaming stuff, right? Like Dungeons and Dragons and all that kind of stuff. I'm like the only trans woman who knows nothing about Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm sorry, but it's not my jam. It's really boring and silly to me. I can't stand Renaissance fairs. I can't stand cosplay. I can't stand like LARPing and all that nonsense. And Deborah Ann Woll is a dungeon master in the tabletop world. in Dungeons and Dragons. I come from the kink world, and a dungeon master is something way different. But who else has this? Kanye West, now known as Ye, right? Once he was famous for his iconic hip hop songs, and now he's just famous for anti-Semitism. Wow. And like his hero Hitler, he has his conjunction with Venus and Mars in Taurus. And he's obsessed with fashion, right? He's always been a bit metro and fussy about his looks. His arrogance and his abrasiveness have also alienated him in public and private life. And we can see this, right, in his relationship issues and his very public breakdown. Another rotten person that has this, in fact, a very rotten person, was Jeffrey Epstein, right? The infamous child trafficker and rapist. And he died in prison, right, under mysterious circumstances. I mean, it really wasn't that mysterious. It's sort of like, we know what didn't happen, right? He was a master of manipulation and abuse in order to get people to do the evil things that he wanted. And his influential abilities got him into some very exclusive social circles where he was able to commit his hideous acts under the radar and under the cover of his big connections. And similar to Kanye, he was also obsessed with the fashion industry and modeling, mostly exploiting models. But what does this mean for you in transit? Well, remember that Venus is our social nature, so her usual charm will be overtaken by awkwardness when she enters Malefic Enclosure. In Aquarius, she wants to explore different types of sexuality and relationships. But while she is enclosed, any attempts to be smooth and seductive are going to fall flat on their face. Like, did you ever see the movie American Pie? I'm sorry, everything's in movies to me. And remember that scene where Jason Biggs is about to make love to Nadia, right? The beautiful foreign exchange student. And she asks him to do a seductive dance for her. And he starts like, looking like he's having convulsions. Or like he's an armadillo trying to make love to a football. This doesn't mean that you can't have romantic fun. It just means that you shouldn't be too attached to expectations. And if things get awkward, just acknowledging it and laughing about it can take away the tension. However, Venus won't be able to reconcile conflicts as easy as she typically does. She'll be secretly carrying around that Martian energy that she's so apt to use to upset people. She'll often express this by being what? Catty and aggressive. Remember to keep those snide remarks to yourself and don't be a mean girl. Remember that uplifting people can feel very uplifting to you as well. But in order to see how this will manifest for you in particular, we need to do your horoscopes. And we always do these based on each rising sign. So you'll get the most out of them if you know your rising sign. But if you don't, just watch for your sun sign. So for Aries Rising, Aquarius is your 11th house, right, of hopes and friends. When Mars charges in, he often stirs up conflicts with our friends and in our social circles. You may have been acting a bit proud lately, or maybe you made some stupid gaffes, or you could have just lost your temper and found yourself cut off from other people. But Venus, right, coming in initially makes us regret some of our harsh words or actions. But watch out, because when she's enclosed, she can't really reconcile with people like she normally does. She'll turn to sour grapes. She gets resentful, right? And can even cause more of a mess if she's not aware of herself. And the thing here that you have to do is act with integrity. And that means doing the right thing, even when it's uncomfortable, because you need other people to help you succeed, right? Stand up for yourself, but don't alienate yourself. Well, what about Taurus Rising? So for Taurus Rising, Aquarius is your 10th house of life direction. So Mars here creates conflicts in our work life, particularly with authority figures like bosses those conflicts also can hurt your chances of getting new opportunities. So you got to be mindful of burning bridges or harming your reputation. Venus, on the other hand, gives a sense of diplomacy here, and she finds she can make amends, except when she's enclosed. Then she starts talking gossiping, spreading rumors, but all of her little passive-aggressive bull can backfire just as bad. And the trick here is to not take things too personally. And that's easier said than done. You may have had an embarrassing moment that came up, but there's nothing you can do about it now. And you can't change how people think. All you can do is do your best and act as if everyone was going to read about it in the front page of the New York Times, right? But what about Gemini Rising? Gemini Rising people. This puts Aquarius in your ninth house. And Mars coming in likely made you a bit of a fanatic, and probably defensive about your beliefs, whether it's spirituality or politics. Usually is one of those two things. Venus, on the other hand, helps us to see other points of view and to see the bigger context in which they all sort of connect and intersect and how they are reactions, right, or responses to societal conditions. But when Venus is enclosed, you will likely get a bit resentful, and you'll probably be dismissive of other points of view, and sort of snidely trash them behind other people's backs, right? Like, what they think? Oh my God, they're so stupid. The lesson here is to see context, though, and to understand why people may think the way that they do. Of course, some people's beliefs are absolutely abhorrent and entail hurting vulnerable people. So you don't have to accept those at all. But it does help to see perhaps why they think such vile things. Well, what about Cancer Rising? So for Cancer Rising, Aquarius is your 8th house of death and debt. Mars here encourages you to want to spend money that you don't have, right? To use that credit card. And you may be having issues with tax season, because that's a big thing coming up. You may also find yourself getting angry about a past situation, something that you were suppressing that pops back up, gets triggered. As I said before, Venus usually helps us to reconcile both our balance sheets and with the people we're angry at. But when she's enclosed here, she does these very half-hearted reconciliations. It's like, I'm sorry, but, or I'm sorry you feel that way, but, or I said this because you said that, right? There's resentment in the apology, right? There's a little tinge of blame or reverse blame in the apology. And the trick here is to anticipate your desire to spend, right, on the money side, right? Your potential losses, and also your anger, right? That way you can be ready to make better decisions rather than just reacting, which is what Mars tends to do, right? But what about Leo Rising? Leo Rising. Aquarius is your 7th house of partnerships. And Mars has probably been stirring up conflicts in your relationships, especially romantic ones, right? You may be feeling agitated with your partner or vice versa. Remember to think before you speak here, because hurtful comments right now could fester, right? And they could lead to more conflicts later. Now, Venus usually helps to resolve these conflicts, but when she enters enclosure, you could find these resolutions to be half-hearted and non-committal. Venus can also indicate someone else coming into your life. Perhaps a woman or a trans woman who captivates your attention. I'm not dropping hints, Leo Rising, but you know. The key here, though, is to take me out, and besides that, to walk away from arguments so that you can be precise with your thoughts and intentions, right? You don't want to just word vomit things out that you're going to regret later. You want to be able to express yourself clearly to your partners. It would also do you good to lighten up a little bit, right? Let go and enjoy new people. I'm not advertising, but I'm a shameless self-promoter. Well, what about Virgo Rising, homies? So for Virgo Rising, Aquarius is your 6th house, right? Of obligations. Mars has probably been giving you the drive to get these things done, right? And cross them off the list. But it could feel quite tedious, and you probably risk burnout. And Venus usually helps us to slow down and prioritize tasks so that we still find time for rest. But when she's in closed, rest isn't rest, is it? Because we keep dwelling and lingering on things. Or perhaps you start getting lazy, right? And find it hard to get going again. I mean, alternatively, though, you could get a new pet or an animal comes into your life. And I don't mean me. The trick here, though, is to budget your time and only pick so many tasks per day and be kind with yourself. And find things that will help you be present during your downtime rather than sitting there worrying and getting stuck in your head, which Virgos so love to do, don't they? And what about our Libra rising friends? This is Amber. This is Amber, Libra rising. And this puts Aquarius in your 5th house of children and fun. Mars has probably been stirring up conflicts with your children, and I bet they've been a pain. I bet they've been a pain in the ass, even though you love them. You and I both know kids can be ass. You don't gotta lie to kick it. Come on. Now, you may also be getting amorous, right? And lustful. Or you may find yourself getting pouty or selfish about enjoying yourself. And Venus usually helps us to find a balance, right? And we get to release our demons. Just a little bit, A lot of my demons reside in my fluids. Venus enclosed, though, makes having fun tedious and feel like a mixed bag. Romantic encounters and pleasurable outings will tend to have something go wrong. Not that they're all bad, but you could be out at a baseball game or something and you're waiting in line, for popcorn. And the Karen in front of you just starts a bunch of shit. Starts yelling at people and turns around to you like, ah! They kind of sour your good time a little bit so that when you talk later, well, that was a great game, but then there was this awful person, The trick here is to let go of expectations and not stress on having a good time. When you try and have a good time, it's usually not very good. And stuff goes bad sometimes. It just does, like organic produce. But try to live in the moment and not be too upset when things don't go according to your plans. But what about Scorpio rising people? Scorpio rising. This is Aquarius in your 4th house, right? So Mars has probably been bringing a lot of agitation around the home. Or maybe you've been a bit tyrannical about your space and privacy. And sometimes things break. Or we break them, right? Don't be a Kyle. Be nice to the drywall. What did the drywall do to you? We also tend to get in fights with pushy parents, roommates, and landlords during these things. But Venus usually brings harmony to our home situation, and we feel the need to decorate or beautify, right? Our area, our living space to reflect how we feel on the inside. But when she gets enclosed, nothing feels quite right. Everything feels equally dissatisfying. No amount of leveling will be able to make that picture frame look right. No. You're just going to be like, you know? But the key is to hold to your boundaries here. You'll need to designate time where everyone needs to leave you the fuck alone so you can recharge your batteries. You'll want to push yourself when you've already been stressed and tired and you need to take time out. You see, this is going to be quite important for you. My Scorpio rising. Ooh, the person I just started seeing is a Scorpio rising. You know? Scorpio rising. But what about Sagimattarius rising? Sagittarius rising. This puts Aquarius in your third house of siblings, community, and communication. Now, Mars may be sparking conflicts with siblings or extended family at this time. And you're also prone to what? Road rage, trying to rush around, finishing errands. And you'll also have a tendency to be using harsh words, right? And Venus usually helps smooth these things over, right? Conflicts, and makes us seem more eloquent, poetic, and tactful. But when she's enclosed, she gets very passive aggressive, doesn't she? She's like Mean Girls. She suddenly starts saying things that would be hurtful if they weren't so stupid. And the key here is not to get carried away by fleeting feelings and let little interactions change your overall opinions of people. You see, people make mistakes, and so do you. And if you give in to the impulse, right, to be a little bully, it will bite you in the ass later, I promise you. But what about our Capricorn rising friend? So this puts Aquarius in your second house, right, of finances. And watch out, because Mars in the second house gives us the drive to overspend. And we end up hurting ourselves in the long run, don't we? We make impulsive decisions and we regret them later. Venus, though, here, right? She's a bit like Madonna. I'm living in a material world and I am a material girl. Yeah, I am a material girl. She can bring luck with money, but when she's enclosed, she lets her desire for nice things run amok. And she falls back into destructive Martian spending habits. Right? She lets Mars influence her decisions. And the key here is to anticipate this and have a set budget for the rest of this month and for the month of March. And just know that spending beyond these limits is going to make you quite upset later. And what about Aqua Rising? Aquarius Rising friends, this is me and my people. And Aquarius is our first house of self. And Mars here, right, adds to our confidence after being in the 12th house where we feel self-loathing a little bit. And we get invigorated and charged up, don't we? But be careful, because we're prone to accidents. So we need to slow down and pay attention to what we're doing so that we don't have a bad time. Venus here, though, makes us a lot more charming. We feel beautiful and sexy. But like, you know, the popular girl in high school, right? But how you treat people will affect you later, right? You should be proud of yourself. That's fine. And it's okay to feel like a little goddess. You know, like me. I'm a little goddess. But not at the expense of others, right? The key is to remember when Venus's confidence is tempered with love, then she delights in the confidence and success of others. Like I should be delighting in Amber, you know, and her success and confidence. But what about Pisces rising? See, we're almost done. Pisces rising. And this puts Aquarius in your 12th house of self-destruction and isolation. And Mars here will make us feel quite prickly, right? Resentful. And he encourages self-destructive behavior and habits. It's like we suddenly say, right? We get a mentality. And we can justify making bad decisions. Venus here typically helps us to consider why we feel the way we do. And encourages us to take some healing time out from stressful situations. And it's usually a great time to, seek help or get therapy with our mental health. But when she's enclosed, she gets deceptive and resentful. She deceives herself by justifying her destructive behavior. Like, well, they did this to me, so why should I care? Oh, I deserve this. And that kind of nonsense. So the key here is to remember that the issue has nothing to do with others, but with you and your relationship to yourself. We gain confidence by what? As I said earlier, by doing things and achieving real results, not magical thinking. That nonsense doesn't do shit. And at the same time, don't let hopelessness get the better of you, because that's our main enemy in the 12th house is hopelessness. There's always a dawn. There's always a new day. And nothing ever stays the same. Even dreadful situations don't stay the same. So learn to cultivate optimism and a hopeful view for the future. And that will make this a lot better transit for you. Anyway, I'm done messing with that stuff now. I hope it was useful for you. I mean, it's all necessary stuff to understand what's going on right now and in your own life.